What's up guys, and welcome to my 2026 updated Bronya guide. To this day, Bronya is still a very valuable character, providing really strong buffs, especially with a -1 setup on a team, and she overall hasn't really received too many changes on how she is built, but I am still making an updated guide just in case there's some info that needs to be known. Starting off with an overview on Bronya's kit, her basic attack will deal wind damage based off her attack to a designated enemy. Her skill dispels a debuff from a single ally and allows them to take action, while also increasing their damage by 66% for one turn. Using the skill on Bronya herself cannot make her trigger the action advance effect. Her ultimate will increase the attack of all allies by 55%, and also their crit damage based off 16% of Bronya's crit damage plus 20% for 2 turns. Her talent will advance forward her next action by 30% when using a basic attack. Her technique will make the start of the next battle have an attack increase to all allies by 15% for 2 turns. Her A2 increases the crit rate for the basic attack to 100%. Her A4 at the start of the battle will increase allies' defense by 20% for 2 turns. And her A6 will make everyone on the team do 10% more damage while Bronya is present on the field. Her eidolons are as followed. Her E1 will have a 50% fixed chance when she uses skill to recover a skill point and also has a 1-turn cooldown. Her E2, when using skill, will increase the target ally's speed by 30% after taking action for 1 turn. Her E4 gives Bronya access to a follow-up attack that can be launched when an ally uses a basic attack on an enemy who has wind weakness, which will deal wind damage equal to 80% of her basic attack damage and triggers once per turn. And her E6 will increase the duration of the damage boost effect provided by the skill on your target ally for an additional turn. When it comes to what Lightcone to use on Bronya, she is working with quite a few options. In a sense, a lot of them can outperform each other depending on your scenario, as there's some niche cases that I will get into. But overall, the most universal and reliable one is Sunday's signature Lightcone, which after the wearer uses skill or ultimate on one ally character, the wearer will regenerate 6 energy, and the ability's target receives a stack of him for 3 turns, stacking up to 3 times, and each stack will increase the holder's damage dealt by 15%, and after every 2 instances of skill or ultimate used on an ally character, you will recover a skill point. The energy portion of this Lightcone helps Bronya keep uptime on her ultimate when you do cast it the first time. The actual buffing capability of this Lightcone is also pretty solid, providing you up to a 45% increase to damage dealt. Unfortunately, comparatively to Sunday, who also has a single target targeting ult, Bronya cannot stack up 2 stacks right beside each other because she can only target one ally character via her skill, as her ultimate is a full AoE team-wide buff. So you will be stacking up the Lightcone when it comes to the actual damage dealt stacks a bit slowly, but it is still fine. Just having 1 or 2 stacks is still good. Obviously, you want to get it to at least 2, which you will be able to after the second cast of her skill, which will make it good. And now every 2 times you use skill on that character you are buffing, you will recover a skill point. Of course, this depends on the team you are running. If your DPS is mainly SP negative, this will help significantly. But if you're running a team that doesn't consume too many skill points in general, then of course it's not going to be that crazy. Bronya herself consumes a lot of skill points because obviously you want to skill as much as possible, and often she is paired with other DPS that use their skill frequently, so usually the SP recovery is going to be very helpful, and overall making it the generalist best option. Another Lightcone that's good on her is going to be But the Battle Isn't Over, which will increase the wearer's energy regen rate by 10%, allow the wearer to recover a skill point on using their ultimate for every 2 casts, and when the wearer uses skill, the next ally taking action except the wearer will deal 30% more damage for 1 turn. So the energy regen provided here, alongside once again something like an energy regen rope, will allow you to keep uptime on her ultimate and also just get it quicker. Not as good as Sunday's Lightcone, but every 2 uses of your ultimate will allow you to get a skill point, and it does let you start with that effect. So when you go into battle, your first ultimate usage will recover a skill point, your next one won't, the one after that will, the one after that won't, the one after that will, and so on. So it does help you form a somewhat skill point generation. It's not, once again, as fast as Sunday's, but it is still fine. And how the nature of her skill works, where you give the ally an action, you are going to be able to always have uptime on the last part of this Lightcone after you do cast your skill. Since you buff them, you give them a turn, they get to act, and now on top of the buffs that they're getting from Bronya herself in her base kit, they also get 30% increased damage for the 1 turn, which makes this Lightcone also very strong on Bronya. Just like with the majority of Harmony units, Dance 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 can provide a significant performance upgrade in your teams, with the effect that will advance forward all allies' actions by 16% when the wearer uses their ultimate, and at S5 it is 20%. 24%. This Lightcone can either be the best Lightcone in the game or completely useless depending on how you use it. If you do want to use Dance and Sense, be sure it is actually allowing you to achieve something important in battle, such as achieving a threshold that allows you to get 3 turns within the first MLC cycle, or it doesn't even have to be something like that. It at least allows you to maybe even act before an enemy attacks you, which would usually provide bad in your run. As long as one of the two options are being provided, again providing you an extra turn where you usually wouldn't in some of the cycles, especially the first one where it's easiest to get the extra third action, or at least acting before enemies would originally maybe kill you. In that case, this Lightcone can be really strong. Otherwise, you're better off using any of the other options I am going to mention, because maybe you just get a slight action advance, it doesn't give you another turn, it doesn't put you before enemies attack, which effectively doesn't really make it worth it. Past and Future is another option you can't use. When the wearer uses their skill, the next ally taking action except the wearer deals 16% increased damage for 1 turn, and at S5, it is a 32% increase. So at S5, it's slightly better than the but the battle isn't over effect for the last part. It's pretty much just that part of that entire Lightcone. And again, since her nature of her skill is going to be giving the ally a turn, you're able to have uptime on this, giving them 32% increased damage. So a simple yet effective Lightcone you can use. If pairing her with a wind DPS, you can use Planetary Rendezvous, which will increase damage for every ally that is the same type as the wearer by 12% when you do enter battle, and at S5, it's 24%. So the requirement would be the DPS needs to be wind, otherwise it is effectively useless. These next 3 options I'm going to mention is extremely niche and depends on kind of the investment on your account. At least 2 of them, because 2 of these are very time limited, because the way you can refresh the buff is very unrealistic within the battle. The other one is usable, but depends on the DPS as well. One of them is Sparkle's signature Lightcone, which increases the wearer's crit damage by 32%. At the start of the battle, the wearer gains mass for 3 turns. Having mass will increase your team's crit rate by 10% and crit damage by 28%. And for every 1 skill point the wearer recovers, they gain a stack of Radiant Flame, and reaching 4 stacks will remove Radiant Flame and gain mass for 4 turns. The crit damage stick is going to be really nice just to increase her crit damage buff, since the crit damage buff also does scale off her own crit damage, but the main requirement is the mass. You will only really get 3 casts of skill before the buff runs out, and the only way Bronya can recover skill points is the refund on the E1 with a 50% fixed chance, and even that is going to be too slow. So you mainly want to use this Lightcone when it is a battle that you can actually clear really quickly, to where Bronya is really just acting 3 times. So you can actually keep the mask uptime, which really depends on your investment on your DPS and such, and your setups as well. Since if you have a lot of investment, you can do incredible damage. So for a very big upgrade to that damage, 10% crit rate is going to be really nice. 28% crit damage for that team is going to be great as well. So providing the fact that you are within the turn limit and having mask, it does make it useful. Very rarely will you actually refresh the buff, since it will take too long. And then at the very least, the crit damage stick is also nice. For the same reasons, Tribu's Lightcone also does fall into that troop. Similar crit damage stick at 36% instead of 32. You mainly ignore the follow-up attack part. You're not really going to focus on that. You only have access to a follow-up attack with E4, and even with E4, you're not going to see it too much. It's mainly the idea of gaining the Presage effect, because when you do go into battle, you'll have Presage for 2 turns. And having Presage will first entering battle will give you 21 energy, so that allows you to ult really quick. And on top of that, you give everyone 48% crit damage, so even more crit damage than you normally would give. At least when it comes to using the E4 follow-up attack, you're able to refresh this a lot more than something like Sparkle's Icon, where you need to regenerate 4 skill points. This one just requires you to use the follow-up attack once, so you actually are able to refresh this frequently. But of course, that does depend on your investment. Not everyone is going to have an E4 Bronya, and if you don't have E4 Bronya, unfortunately, there is no way for you to refresh the Presage effect, so you would be locked into clearing within those 2 turns. And at the very least, if that's not active, you still do have the 36% stat stick to increase the buff. So overall, a usable option if you're able to use it to the fullest with the 2 turns. And this Lightcone actually becomes really valuable. Again, if you are able to do enough damage within those 2 turns. And if you have E4, that skyrockets the value, because now you can refresh it, as long as the enemy has wind weakness. The last option, this is really just exclusive for if you are using her with a skill DPS, that is Ceredra's signature Lightcone, providing 64% attack increase. The skill point regeneration is unfortunately unusable on Bronya, since she doesn't use her ultimate to attack. After the wearer uses their skill on one ally character, the skill damage dealt by that target will increase by 54% for 3 turns. The attack stick is also whatever. It's not like you're increasing everyone's attack based off her own attack, so she will just do some more damage, but that's going to be negligible. It's really just for the last part of this Lightcone. 54% increase to skill damage damage dealt, which is a lot. You're only really able to utilize this on Finon and Anoxa specifically, so if for some reason you're not running this Lightcone on Ceridra, you can put this on Bronya, because when she uses her skill, not only will she give them another turn with all her base kit buffs, but now will also buff their skill damage dealt by 54% for the 3 turns, which you also permanently will have up. So for those specific characters, this Lightcone is usable. For relic sets, these inherently really haven't changed. Overall, 4-piece Relieved Ordeal is going to be your go-to, with the 2-piece increasing speed by 6%. 4-piece using skill or ultimate on an ally target will increase their crit damage by 18% for 2 turns. This stacks up to 2 times. The 2-piece speed is going to allow you to get a easier breakpoint to allow you to hit your goals for -1, hyperspeed, anything alike. 4-piece, as you are always going to use it with characters that do benefit from crit damage usually, you're able to get up to a 36% increase to crit damage, which is going to just be a nice portion, and can also allow you to focus on other stats, mainly something like speed, since this relic set is providing a good amount of crit damage to your target DPS, overall making it her best in slots still. You also still can use 4-piece hacker space with the same 2-piece speed increased by 6%. 4-piece will increase speed for everyone when using an ultimate on an ally character by 12% for 1 turn and cannot stack. You could use this alongside any setup, such as maybe you're not hitting a certain amount of speed, but you just happen to have a really good build. With the help of hacker space, if the 12% speed helps you hit like a hyperspeed threshold or at least something similar, it can be very beneficial. Just be sure when you are using this relic set that the speed percentage is not going to mess up current tight tunings. Let's say you have an existing -1 setup already, where your Bronya is 1 speed lower than your primary DPS, but let's say your speed on Bronya is higher for the base speed. Speed percentage buffs are calculated based off base speed, so if Bronya has a high enough base speed as opposed to the actual DPS you have a -1 setup on, there is a chance that Bronya can end up outspeeding them and acting before them, which is what you don't want. So if you are using this 4-piece set, just be sure that doesn't happen to you, and it just doesn't mess any tunings in general. Otherwise, it can be a good option. If you want to just forego any kind of tuning and you're just trying to get a bunch of turns on Bronya as much as possible, Eagle set 4-piece is good. Technically, 2-piece is usable with 10% wind damage, but again, her damage is negligible. 4-piece, after the way uses their ultimate, their action is advanced forward by 25%. So again, this primarily would be something where you just build a bunch of speed on Bronya, 170, 180, or even higher if you're able to. And then the action advance is going to allow you to achieve more turns quicker. Just be sure if you are running the set, you have a specific goal in mind and you actually are hitting the right tunings. Just because if you put the set on her and it just messes up your speed tuning, it doesn't really provide you an extra turn or anything. Similar to what I mentioned with DDD, it's not really going to provide you any benefits. So if you are using the 4-piece Eagle set, at least be sure it is helping you once again hit certain tunings and at least allowing you to get a lot of turns, as it should be for how it is intended. You can also still opt to do 2-piece on her. The most common one would be something like 2-piece speed and 2-piece crit damage. So 2-piece Relieved Ordeal, Warrior Goddess, or Hacker Space for 6% speed, with 2-piece Wave Strider for the 16% crit damage increase, so you could just further amplify her buff. Or you could just do 2-piece speed, so 2-piece Warrior Goddess with Relieved Ordeal or Hacker Space, just so you can get 12% speed. For Planar Ornaments, really just give her any of the supportive sets. Lushaka is the most common one nowadays, with 5% energy regen rate and 12% attack for the character positioned first in the team lineup. Just be sure that character doesn't get a benefit from attack. So Bronya gets the energy regen rate, while the character positioned first gets more attack. This is usually, again, the best supportive set nowadays, but you can really use any of the other ones still. If paired with the wind DPS such as Anoxa, Penacony does work, also providing 5% energy regen rate and 10% damage for everyone that is the same type as the wearer. And as it is for everyone, if you're running an Anoxa team with Ceridra on the team, so if the team is Anoxa, whoever, and then Ceridra Bronya, you're also increasing Ceridra's damage at the same time, so that could be a benefit, but again, just be sure your primary DPS is the same type as Bronya, so wind. Broken Keel, while more outdated, still does work. Increases wearer's effect res by 10%, and reaching 30% or higher will give everyone 10% crit damage. Very simplistic, you just get the effect res, and now you can give everyone 10% crit damage. So even more crit damage buffing from Bronya herself. And Ageless still also does work, 12% max HP, doesn't really do anything, but it does help with survivability, so it's not completely worthless. 120 speed or higher will give everyone 8% attack, so the requirement is very easy. Bronya always has like 134 or higher. Just be sure the team, or again, primary DPS is an attack scaler to actually get a benefit from the 8% speed. Now, if you're trying to go for a Bronya that's able to hit high thresholds, or you just really need her to be the first one to act in battle with high build speed at the same time, Von Walk does work. 5% energy regen rate and also reaching 120 speed or higher. The wearer's action is advanced forward by 40% immediately upon entering battle. So a proper built Bronya with speed, this will practically guarantee that she's the first one to act in battle for any reason you do want, and can also pair really well with a high speed Bronya on 4-piece Eagle. Also running Von Walk can help her achieve that extra turn that you want. So for those setups, you can also use Von Walk. The main sets are as followed. For the body, you want to run crit damage. For the feet, you want to run speed. For the orb, you want to run HP percent or defense percent for survivability. And for the link rope, you want to run energy regen rate. For the subsets, first would be speed to breakpoint before actually your goals. Since any goal with Bronya, you're going to want to have a breakpoint at least. So of course, tied with the breakpoint speed would be getting to your actual speed threshold that you want to hit. If you're going for a -1 setup, of course, just get your Bronya to 1 to 3 speed. It doesn't exactly have to be -1 below your primary DPS. So let's say your Anaxa is 141 speed. In that case, you would need to get your Bronya to 140 speed or at least 137. Just anywhere within the margin where it doesn't completely separate them, but still close enough to get the -1 setup. Past that, if you are running something like Broken Keel that has a requirement, of course, hit the actual requirement, so in this case 30% effect res, and then more crit damage is going to be great to further amplify her buff, and survivability stats will also help you just so you don't die. Once again, first biggest priority is going to be breakpoint / also the speed you want to hit for your setup. Once again, for -1 setups, you just want to get to 1 to 3 speed less than your primary DPS. And if you're doing hyperspeed, of course, 160.1 or higher. Past that, any other requirements such as Broken Keel, so 30% effect res, and then after that would be more crit damage to amplify our buff, with also survivability stats being after that, just so you don't die. If you are running a really fast Bronya with Eagle and or Von Walk, in that case, you could just prioritize as much speed as possible, just get it to the thresholds you want to hit. But for most people, they won't be doing that, so in that case, it would just be the speed tuning that I did mention. Team building with Bronya is very simple. Really, any team comp that can benefit from someone like Sunday nowadays can also use Bronya in Sunday's plays, and sometimes can honestly outperform depending on what you're doing. So for an example, like I mentioned throughout this video, I'm just going to use Anaxa for a -1 setup, so a team could look like this, where it's Anaxa Bronya. -1 setup here, primarily, the third slot usually would always go to Sarija, last slot would go to Sustain, Donning would be the best case here. If you don't have Sarija, you can sub her out for someone like Robin, you can even put someone like Tribby, even Cypher if you want more debuffs. And if you're doing Sustainless, of course, sub out Donning for one of the Sustains, you can throw in Cyrene, Cyrene works really good with Anaxa. Although with her action advance, you just want to make sure it doesn't mess up with your tunings as well. Since running double action advance can be a bit of a problem, so again, play around with that when it comes to specific stuff. Throw on RMC instead. Same thing that I mentioned with Cyrene with the Men Bluff. Again, you could throw in someone like Robin there as well. Tribby, I'm just going to put Tribby here, so Sustain this team could look like this. When it comes to running Bronya Hyperspeed or like a Eagle setup with Bond and Walk just to get as much turns as possible, you'd usually pair her alongside a DPS. In this case, that would be base speed. So for my example, I'm just going to use Yunli since she's really never built with speed. So the DPS would be Yunli paired with Bronya, again at hyperspeed or even faster. Third slot would go to another support. Again, really depends on your options. In this case, you can throw in Robin. Maybe still works in that regard as well, but in my case, I'll just put Robin for this example. And then last slot, Sustain, Danheng, and Huohu would be the best for these. But realistically, for Sustains, use the best option you got. You can use Aventurin, Lingsha, you can even use Hyacinth, just depends on who you have. So in my case, I'll just put Huohu here. So it could look something like this for a hyperspeed or higher Bronya. A specific setup you can use with Aglia specifically is actually going to be possible with Bronya as well, where you do run Bronya, Aglia, Sunday. That is the 3 cornerstone of this. Pretty much you just run them all together. The idea of this team is to use Bronya to bring up Sundays, just so Sunday can bring up Aglia. If you want to run that team, you can. It's not better than Aglia's best teams, where you're running just Aglia, Sunday, Cyrene, and then Sustain or Sustainless. But it is an option you can definitely work with. And last slot, again, could go depending on your Sustain or Sustainless, Daneng, Fofo, whatever your best Sustain is, as long as it's usually not adventuring with Aglia, just because he actually is able to have a shield expire on her because she takes so many turns. So Daneng is usually the one that can keep up the shield, or just run a hero like Hyacinth. And then Sustain this, you can just put in Cyrene instead, so the team can look something like this. And that is my full updated 2026 Bronya guide. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of style content. Check the description to check out my organized channel, and I'll see you later. Peace out.